The Golden Stallion is here for you, baby. And this is something I told you would be coming maybe just a day or two ago. But
I heard it.
You heard it. Of course, if you can't tell already, I am not alone. I am being joined by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, and I joined
not
you.
Alone.
Never alone. But
never alone.
Never
because
alone.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Got your sweet voice on. But that might be partly due because I joined you for a trip to a yoga retreat.
That's right. We went to the Kripalu Center in, where is it in Massachusetts?
It's in the Berkshires.
Massachusetts, in the Berkshires.
Yeah, and of course...
a seat of a lot of anarchist activity, historically, actually.
This is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's
the
very
American
fascinating.
Revolution, and also like W.E.B. Du Bois and like all these other Thoreau, and Thoreau is more like Eastern Massachusetts, but I mean I think you maybe spent some time in the Berkshires. But there's a lot of famous anarchists that came from the Berkshires area, and abolitionists as well.
Well, I'll tell you, historically, the mountains are just like, I mean, it's a bastion of anti-civilization.
Yeah, that's
They always have been. They still are. When you consider Zomia in Southeast Asia and all that, which is, depending upon your interpretation, is literally an anarchist country or a geographical region anyway. So yeah, something about those mountains.
I like that you didn't say nation.
Right. Yeah. Something about those mountains,
yeah.
Well,
something
anyway.
in the mountain air.
Yeah. That's
no
a whole other
fluoride
conversation.
In the water.
There's that. I know there's a degree of a theory that there's humans that like there's mountain people and there's sea people, and those are the two types.
I actually think there's something to that.
Sure.
And I've always considered myself a mountain person.
Same here. Absolutely. I mean, I was almost literally born, on the foothills of the Adirondacks anyway. So, I can certainly appreciate that. But anyway, we're here to actually talk about Kripalu. Now, of course, the Kripalu Center. Now, I talked about this. When was the last time we went? Because this is our second visit that we've gone to this.
That's right. The last time we went was in March of 2017.
Okay.
So that was like 8 or 9 months ago, and it's now November 2017.
Okay, so if you go back that far, and if I can find it, I'll put a link in the show notes for it. I did a review where I was alone, although you came in towards the end.
I think I had a cameo on that one.
Yeah, you had a cameo.
But mostly it was just you.
Right, where I talked about my experience the first time that we went to Kripalu, which is this world-renowned, yoga center named after Swami Kripalu, who is this very famous, yoga teacher and whatever. I'm not going to get into his history or story because
we did hear a lecture about it.
We did hear a lecture about
background in history. Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, you can hear my original review of this from a few months ago, and like I said, if I can think of it, I'll get it in the show notes for this one so you can find it quickly. But I had a very positive experience my first time, and my second time, honestly, no different. That it was also a very positive experience. My first time going there was, the best term I can use for it was enlightening. Like, and in fact, I even said I saw the future, going there. Like I saw what the future could be. And now, understand, it's not the yoga that like awakened my mind or some kind of business like that. I'm not going to say it's horseshit, but it wasn't anything it wasn't anything spiritual. There wasn't anything like that. It was just seeing the way that people could actually come together in like this one kind of building, like, kind of a community center kind of thing, and spend so much time together in such interesting conditions. And in fact, like there's kind of, we'll talk about all of this because there's sort of a ban on electronics there and everything. It's pretty remarkable. And it really, and I'll rehash some of that a little later as well.
Yeah, we will. We'll paint a picture. We'll do a review.
Yeah. It was that, like I said, very positive, very enlightening to me and very inspirational. And the second time around was a little different, from any of that. So,
well, I would say I had a good experience the first time, but I had an even better experience the second time. And I really got a lot out of it this time, especially.
So we were going there. We went for this time around because the last time we only went for like a day.
Yeah,
I mean, it
and
was an overnight.
That
but,
wasn't planned. I mean, it was.
Yeah, there's an ugly snowstorm coming in.
Yeah, basically, we had planned to stay for 2 days, and there was a snowstorm that came in on the second day, and so we took off after 24 hours there. We checked out one day early.
Right.
And the way it works at that place is you can check in around like 2 or 3 p.m., and then you can stay until the next day after lunch. So you pretty much can stay for 24 hours if you pay for one night or whatever.
Yep.
So that's nice. It's not like a conventional hotel where you kind of get rushed out the door at 11 a.m. or whatever.
Yeah.
And you can't check in till 4 or 5 p.m. the day before.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not just for sleeping. It's an immersive experience. So when you stay there, it's almost like staying on a campus. There are actually literal dormitories that you can stay in because they have a variety of housing options that are geared towards everybody, toward a variety of people being able to afford it. So, for example, if you want the cheap seats, you can stay in one of the dorm housings, and they have like bunk beds. They have rooms that can fit up to 20 people. So if you have a large party, you have a lot of friends you want to go with, that might be a good option for a big group.
Hey, I'll tell you, I saw some of these rooms, and like it's just so there was a gym. They have a little bit of a fitness center. I mean, they're really like these slivers of holes in the wall, but they had a fair selection of weights or whatever. So I was spending a lot of time in that. But like the window to the gym looked right into one of these like dorm style.
Oh, really?
Rooms
you didn't
that
tell
they
me
had.
about that.
Oh yeah, and like. You look in and walk out. I mean, and there's just like 20 women in there in bunk beds, and it's. Hey,
that's cool.
I'm just gonna say I was like, wow, all right, it's like, yeah, this is why I'm working out now.
Every guy's fantasy that they'll get a peek of the sorority sisters or something. No, I mean it could be really fun. Like, I'll tell you, I often have dreams. I went to college in the same area. I went to college at UMass Amherst.
Yeah.
And that is not too far away. It's in the Berkshires. It's really not too far away from Kripalu and where that is. And there's definitely this culture that kind of permeates Western Massachusetts. It's sort of like, it's almost like the hippie culture of Vermont, but different in a way, I guess, maybe infused by some of that anarchistic spirit of the Berkshires and that area. But it's also in Massachusetts. So it's a unique kind of area. And when I was living there in college, I felt like I didn't really appreciate it so much. Like there were aspects of it that I liked, but there were other aspects that drove me kind of nuts. Mm-hmm. And now that I'm a little older and mellowed out, I appreciate even more about it. And I really like the area. And I often have dreams where I go back to live in that area again. Like I go back to college, I go back to UMass to get a second degree, or I go just live there for a while and teach yoga at a college or something like that. Or I just, hang out for the summer in an Airbnb and spend some time there. And I think that's something I want to do at some point, but I don't know exactly how I would do it. But,
right.
but like seeing those dorm rooms at Kripalu, it really recreates that experience that I think a part of me like craves, like going back there, having almost like a college experience. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, I actually have been thinking about doing a yoga teacher training at Kripalu.
Yeah,
so
which
I
I
could totally
fully support.
recapture that type of experience by doing that.
Yeah, which I think is awesome. I want to touch on that quick. Like, I mean, talking about Amherst, which is a place we kind of end up, pretty often and whatever. And it's like lesbian capital of the world, right?
That's Northampton.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
That's where Smith College
that whole kind of area, right? So, like, it really has, and I don't know what term to call this. I'm sure somebody's come up with much better terms, but it's really like this like small town hippie capitalism that you have. And I mean capitalism in the sense of markets, not necessarily in the sense of corporatism at all. That actually has a really nice feel to it. Like it just, I don't know, it just feels welcoming straight up. And like you could just walk around and do whatever. And there's like smiling faces. I mean, and it's really nice. It doesn't hurt that it's predominantly women too, I mean, like that's all right.
Maybe instead of capitalism, you could say like commerce or something. Because
yeah,
there's like offerings, like people are offering stuff and it's not for free or anything, but there's like an abundance there.
Yeah. I mean,
like,
absolutely. Yeah. I don't like to use the word capitalism. That's why I wanted to be, pretty clear on that. But, yeah, I mean, it's pretty fascinating. In fact, that reminds me, I want to try to remember later to talk about when we talk about the gift center, the gift shop at
Yeah.
Kripalu. There's a lot of interesting books in there,
Oh,
but
yeah.
there are a few in there that I was like, oh yeah, see, these people are the future. They are getting
I knew
it.
you would like the gift shop. I knew you'd
Yeah.
like the bookshelf, especially. But
Yeah.
anyway, so we were saying that about the dorm housing.
Yeah,
they
how do
don't just have bunk beds there.
Right.
You know, the accommodations, admittedly, are kind of sparse. You know, it's
Very
not
Spartan.
Yeah, it's not the Marriott. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the Ritz-Carlton, but you know, you can stay there and you have everything you need because it's an all-inclusive kind of place and campus. And I think it's good that the rooms aren't, I mean, you could have one experience at a different place where the rooms are like luxurious to the nines,
Yep.
you know, and you could feel really pampered and stuff. But the rooms at Kripalu are just not distracting. They're just like, it's a place where you can get good, solid sleep and you feel safe and secure in the little room, but it's not meant for you to stay in the room all day.
No,
you know?
right. Yeah. In fact, let me talk about that for a second. So I like that they're pretty austere. They're not ostentatious at all.
There's
nothing
not
along
much
those
in
lines.
them.
Right.
There's not much there. Just some beds and a window and a bathroom.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Right. The construction of the place, I mean, is like there's a ton of concrete involved.
Mm-hmm.
So real quick, Kripalu is the center was originally like a Jesuit training center.
Yeah, it was a monastery.
It was a monastery, right? So keep that in mind. So it was already well suited for people that that are into very shall I say Spartan lifestyle. Obviously not in the warmongering way, but I loved it. Like the design just felt so good. Like I mean, the concrete beams, even in the rooms. Now there's no television. I mean, there's practically nothing in these rooms.
No TV, no phone, nothing to distract you.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I like that a lot. I mean, obviously you can bring your laptop. There's Wi-Fi.
There's not even really lights too much. Like
right.
There's few lights.
Couple
there's
of
the
little
sun,
spot reading lights, and a fair window, and that's about it.
which is really good because a lot of the stuff is focused. They start the activities early in the morning and they end pretty early at night. They don't go late into the night, and it really like the whole thing kind of encourages you to live this lifestyle where you're going with the rhythm of the sun, which is cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
a
I
simpler
think that's
life.
healthy,
Yeah.
And now I've just been hearing it everywhere lately. Everywhere I look, I hear, "Oh, you should really like try to go to bed by 10 o'clock or 10:30. You really can't get good quality sleep if you go to sleep after midnight. Like it doesn't work to just sleep from like 1 to 10 in the morning, 1 a.m. to 10 a.m. You really have to like shift it, like dial it back, reel it back.
Sure, right.
And
right.
instead get that 9 hours from, 10 to 7 or something. So I've been wanting to kind of try it, but I had struggled to shift my circadian kind of back at home to go to bed earlier because I had been used to going to bed before in the months before this over the summer, I would stay up till 12:30, 1 usually. That's like when I would usually go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been wanting to shift my circadian back a little bit, especially knowing that the winter was coming. And, you got to get as much sunlight on your eyeballs as you can. And if you're waking up at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, you're missing hours of sunlight that are precious and scarce in the winter.
Right.
So I was wanting to shift back, but I was having trouble doing it because just at home, like there's work to do, there's lights, there's computers, there's screens. It's hard. So I wasn't having much success, but we had the daylight savings shift, which, gave me a little boost, right? Because it was like, I didn't change the time I was sleeping, but the clocks changed. So it looked like I was getting up earlier. Yeah.
Sure.
I was getting up at the same time. But then going to Kripalu, it was just like, man, at night, they would do these like sleepy yogas and like you'd be eating this like nutritious hippie food and you'd be just like ready to go to sleep at like 9, 10 o'clock.
Yeah, right.
And I would go in the hot tub too. So, I mean, we'll talk about a lot of the other aspects of it, but it's very conducive to like healthy circadian stuff and not many distractions.
Yeah, I particularly like the lack of distractions. Like the bedroom that we sleep in, in our home is like I actually removed everything from it.
Yeah.
I took out everything except for the bed.
Yeah.
And
it is also Spartan, and we try not to have any electronics in there.
Right.
We used to have the Wi-Fi router in that bedroom, but we moved it
took
when we
that
started
out. Yeah,
sleeping
put it in
there.
the basement. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we have blackout shades. We, don't have any light when we're sleeping. So yeah, that bedroom is really good for sleeping.
Yeah, so it felt like, and that was the thing, like the rooms, even just sleeping in those rooms, like the feeling of, I really, I can't get over the concrete. And at first, I even said it to you. I was like, I think I'm going nuts because like, this is what they make jails out of. This is not good.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like a jail.
Well, and I think, what I think, and what I said to you, what I think it is that it's not blocks. It's like flat concrete, like or whatever, it's sanded down concrete where it's just a wall, but it's a wall that's just so solid. I don't know, I like there was even like a feeling of safety. I mean, there's so many things that it was so many different emotions that it was really conducive, and health matters or whatever that I agree that the room really felt conducive to. That was pretty awesome.
Whoever designed those rooms like did so really carefully, I think, because everything was really nice. Like, it wasn't, like we said, it wasn't the Marriott, but it was, you got a really good sleep. Really good sleep, better than most hotels. So anyway, they've got different accommodations. You can pick the dormitory housing where it's bunk beds and a shared bathroom in the hall. Or you can have the mid-range housing, which is like a private room with like 1 or 2 beds in it, but you don't have your own bathroom. You have to go out in the hallway and use a shared bathroom.
Right.
Which they have at different, nearby locations. Or you can have a room with a private room with a private bathroom, and that's the most expensive. But they say that every time you pay full price or whatever, they have these little info cards on the tables in the dining hall, which we'll talk about next. And it says, like, anytime you pay for one of the private rooms or you pay full price for something, it subsidizes scholarships for people to like bring people to Kripalu from around the world and like kids to do yoga and things like that. Now, I don't know how much of that is true, but I don't doubt it. Like, it seems like they would definitely do that. It's a nonprofit organization, so that's another interesting thing about it.
Yep.
Right. It's not for profit, but with a lot of not-for-profit organizations, there's like a lot of waste and inefficiency, and it's like they're trying not to be profitable or successful, you know what I mean? But with Kripalu, it doesn't feel like it has that nonprofit kind of inefficiency.
No, because everything they're doing is very intentional, like down to the like what they do with the waste, what they do with everything there. I mean, they're really big on like the whole kind of ecological stuff,
absolutely,
which is great as well. So
instead of like those little bottles of shampoo on the wall in the showers, they have like bulk containers of like soap, shampoo, and conditioner, so they don't waste like a ton of bottles, giving you the little hotel shampoo and conditioner, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, there's that's lot of thought, right? But it speaks to the overall ethos of the place. I mean, there's a lot of thought. Everything is very carefully crafted, put together, and curated. I think is a really important term with what's happening at Kripalu. Now, so real quick, I just want to give a snapshot. I want to describe a snapshot of like what exactly like a day at Kripalu looks like, and how that goes. So, like you said, it's designed to get you in the, I guess, the mood of maybe being awake from like 6 to 9 or 6 to 10, something like that. 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And so you would start off like there's yoga classes, there's morning yoga of varying degrees of, for each yoga class. I mean, there's a bunch of different studios and what are actually like some of them are converted sanctuaries from, back when it was a Jesuit center. Where you can go to like an intermediate class, a gentle yoga class, or what is it, vinyasa? Is that what you call it? The harder one?
Yeah, that's right. Well, okay. Vinyasa isn't always harder, but it's a style of yoga that tends to be more athletic.
It's more of a workout. So you can choose, like at the same time, you can go to a different style of yoga, right?
Yeah.
And so in the morning, they have, different types of yoga that you can attend, whatever. Then there is breakfast, which runs usually from like 7 to 8:30, which is in this huge mess hall, beautiful, actually, mess hall.
Yep. They have one big dining hall, and all the meals are held there. Now, it's kind of a narrow range of time where they serve each meal, but they do it 3 times a day. So they have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Right.
And they have, and I'll describe this in a second when we get to lunch. So you do that. And then usually from like 8:30 or from 9 to whatever, there are some kind of classes on either, more, I guess, mental aspects, I guess I'll say, of yoga, or therapy style classes of some kind, or,
classes about meditation.
Right.
They have classes about food and nutrition. They have classes about history of yoga, different styles of yoga.
Well, particularly during that block between breakfast and lunch, it seemed like there's usually like a lot about it's not so much like getting into physical yoga, but like maybe discussing other aspects.
Yeah.
Like specific subjects or something. Even if it's like a grief class or something like that, that sort of, or grief course, that sort of thing is going on. So then that runs till about
lunchtime.
Yeah, around lunchtime. Then there's 11:30. There's hikes that are available because it's in the Berkshires. It's in this beautiful fucking area of nature.
Yeah,
so
they've got some mountains and lakes like right on the property that you can hike to easily.
Yeah, and it's stunning. We did some of those last time that we were there. But so then from 11:30 to like 1, you have lunch. Now, real quick, lunch is kind of the longest amount of time. Actually, it might even be like 11 to 1. It's the longest amount of time you have to eat, and it's generally the biggest meal. And that's because
they have these Ayurvedic nutrition tips on the tables at the meals, and they have like a container of spices on each table. It's not just salt and pepper. It's like cayenne, cinnamon, turmeric, and cumin, and like Himalayan sea salts. And then they have this little like a menu you can flip through that has eating tips from the Ayurvedic principles, which is the Indian school of medicine,
right?
That's been around for 5,000 years or whatever, and from Swami Kripalu himself has a couple of quotes in there.
Yeah,
they say basically their policy for breakfast, it's silent.
Yeah,
so
it's silent breakfast.
Nobody's supposed to talk during breakfast.
Right.
And during all of the meals, you're not supposed to have any electronics. So like you can read a book if you want.
A paperback book. They won't even let you bring in an e-reader.
Right.
Which, if you want to hear more about that, I talked about that in my first review of Kripalu, because I thought that was just batshit insane. Like, I get it, no cell phones, I get all the other stuff, but like e-readers, there's no argument for those not being a part of it.
Well,
But
and
anyway,
nobody really enforces it either. I
that's
never
true.
saw anybody enforce it, but
Yeah.
I
would just hide
Brian
it.
enforced it on me because I pulled out my phone during one of the meals and I forgot, and he's like,
I was joking.
He held up the little sign that says, the use of electronics is discouraged during the meals.
I was joking.
Yeah,
But
I know.
what I would do is I would get like a cover for my Kindle that looks like a paperback book, and then just put the Kindle inside of it. Like, I think that's about the easiest.
That's the
solution.
oldest trick in the book.
Yeah.
Pardon the pun. Where
But,
the guy's reading a romance novel inside a chemistry textbook or something.
Right. So there's varying rules around the meals there, bottom line. And like with lunch is, and we sat, we can talk more about the class later. We sat through a class about Ayurveda, which is like this way of being and eating and all this different shit, and sleeping, all of that. It covers all that ground.
Health and lifestyles.
Right.
Yeah.
Health and lifestyle. Thank you. And there they made it very clear. They said, well, lunch should be your biggest meal.
Yeah.
Dinner is like, it's supper, it's supplemental. That's
Yeah.
kind of their argument that they have. I mean, we could talk about where we agree or disagree with that, certainly in a minute. But anyway, so lunch
But
is
they
a
try
big,
to kind of steer you towards that with the food selection, I
yeah.
think.
Yeah, so lunch is kind of the big meal of the day there. Like they're definitely living out their principles, is the word that they describe. So lunch is...
However, they do have some classes during lunch, so you don't have to go to lunch if you don't want to.
That's
they have,
true.
Yoga dance during lunch.
Yeah, like these wild yoga
hikes.
dances, which are...
Our room was near the yoga dance studio, and we heard them like singing and dancing like all hours of the day.
Yeah, they do some wild shit.
Even before we're going to bed.
Right, yeah. So then after lunch, there are some more courses similar, like what are between breakfast and lunch, that you can go to and you can learn about stuff and whatever, and there might even be like a yoga class or two. But then when you get to around 4:00, 4:15,
Yep.
there's another round, just like at the beginning of the day, where there's full-on yoga courses, and you can choose like what's your speed.
You can choose the level,
what
beginner
level.
yoga, intermediate yoga, or vinyasa yoga.
Right, which that runs to about
or
5...
gentle yoga. They have another one too.
Yes, yeah, which that runs to about 5:30, and then at 5:30, from 5:30 to 7 or whatever, you have dinner, and then after 7:00, usually from like 7 to 7:30. I mean, you don't have to go to everything that's going on there. In fact, there's multiple things running at the same time, but there's some other courses, and then usually from like 8:30 or like from 7:30 to 8:30 is generally either they're doing like a go to sleep yoga. What do they call that?
Yoga Nidra.
Yoga Nidra.
That's
thank
yogic sleep.
Yogic sleep. Yeah. Okay.
Meditation.
So they're getting right. So they're getting you ready to go to sleep, or you can go see, something else, or it could be like a course on, like one of the ones we went to was a course on Swami Kripalu himself.
Mm-hmm.
The other was
a cooking demo.
That was just like watching Emerald live.
Yeah,
it really was. We'll talk about that.
He was doing like stand-up comedy while he was cooking, but it was really good. Yeah.
So then after 8:30, you have, pretty much everything there closes, be it the hot tub, the gym, whatever. All these other extraneous things that you can kind of do on your own time close at 10.
Mm-hmm.
So
you have a little bit of time if you want to go to the whirlpool or the gym or whatever.
Right. So if you want to go do that stuff or hit the saunas or something, you've got between 8:30 and 10. Again, you could do this all day long, but there is like a time frame where you can do that. So that isn't it. And then, after 10, whatever, you do what you do, you go fuck or you go to sleep or whatever. But bottom line is that that's a day. That's what a day looks like at Kripalu. That's kind of the breakdown of how it goes. And I just wanted to get that out really quick, what that looks like. Then we can get into the minutia of it. And then you wake up, and you do it all over again. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now that's a day in what they call the R&R. So every day they run those programs that like we just described, and it's called Kripalu R&R. And you can go to Kripalu anytime during the week or the weekend and go to the R&R programs. That's like their basic, programs that they do every day on like a rotating basis or whatever. They bring in all kinds of different people and blah, blah, blah. But so that's R&R. But they also have special programs that are like a weekend or like 5 days or like 3 days in the middle of the week. And they have like they have a yoga school where they do yoga teacher trainings. They have an Ayurveda school where they do Ayurveda education for people who want to become Ayurvedic nutritionists or health coaches and stuff like that.
Right.
They have a yoga therapy school, so you can do therapeutic yoga training. And then they have all kinds of continuing education for like social workers, nurses, yoga teachers, nutritionists, Ayurvedic people, natural holistic health practitioners. So they have all kinds of these special programs. Most of them are for some kind of professionals in the healing arts realm, I guess you could say.
Yep.
But not all of them. In fact, there's a seminar last year that we almost went to, but we missed it, by Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps the Score, and his book
Tremendous
is in the gift shop, in fact. And he was talking about, he was talking to yoga people about how the body holds trauma and where how that happens and everything.
One of those examples of the books, like I mentioned, in the gift shop that, showed these people were really on the pulse. I'll keep going.
Yeah. So that would be an example of the kind of special programs they have. We haven't yet gone to a special program. The 2 times that we went to Kripalu, it was just for the R&R.
Right.
But they do have these focused programs where the schedule, I'm sure, is different, but they do, link back up with the meals and everything like that.
Yeah, but they have a theme.
They do. They have a theme. I was chatting to a gal in the whirlpool who was there learning Ayurvedic massage, and she was a massage therapist, and she was going to learn the Ayurvedic massage techniques. Oh, and they also have a healing arts or like a spa there that you can go and book appointments for massages and facials and like Ayurvedic body work while you're at Kripalu. So I did that. I got a massage and I got an Ayurvedic massage, which was very interesting.
Okay. Yeah. So, it's really, so that's like one of the packages that you go on and whatever, and that's fine. And there's no real, like with the R&R, there's no set time. Like you could go there for a week or 2.
Oh yeah.
And I want to describe a little bit, because something that we've heard over the past 2 times that we've gone, like a lot of the teachers are alumni. Like they're people that have been going to Kripalu maybe for 20, 30, or however long the thing's been in existence. A lot of people will talk about the 90s, like how the 90s were at Kripalu. And apparently it was a very different place. Like, understand, you can, you have you have most of the amenities, minus the electronic stuff that you could want. Like, there's always tea available. There's rooms where 24/7 you can get some kind of tea or some kind of lemon water or something like that.
They have almond milk on tap.
They have yeah, I know. Oh, that's so awesome.
Unlimited almond milk.
Right. And you pretty much have free reign of the place. Like, there's no place that's really like hands off, They
have sunrooms for like meditation. They have like a lot of big windows where you can just sit and look at the mountains and the lake and the outside, and it's very beautiful. They have lots of of plants inside, lots of statues, lots of nice decor. There's like you really can just find a quiet corner and just sit and do your thing.
Yeah. Now, and again, I implore listeners to go back and listen to my original review of it, because there's a lot of in-depth stuff that I go into with that I don't want to retread here. But like there's specific areas where, like, they call them Wi-Fi cafes. There's like kind of 2 of them where you can sit down and, like, it's just known you're going to break out your laptop, you're going to get some business done, whatever. And I talked about this last time, that it's funny that that's like the one area of the entire campus, I'll call it, of the entire campus where people are not smiling, because it's like, oh shit, the fucking world, I mean, and it's hilarious. But anyway, in the 90s, like we've had a few different teachers or yogis, I don't know, whatever, that have told us it was very different. They didn't have coffee. There's like a whole list of things that they did not have at that time. And you really went there to live. Mm-hmm. Like some of these people live there for 16 months, live there for a few years, whatever. And like, it was a, completely transformative, experience. And I imagine they still offer something like that where you can effectively like earn your keep, while you stay there in some way, be it a cook or something. I don't know, whatever the hell you do. So that's interesting that now it's turned into something that's a lot more modern. And it seems like the yogis, when they would talk about it, like they kind of yearned for those days again. Like one guy was saying that, oh yeah, we were trying to like, really like change
get
our
high
brains
from the pranayama.
Yeah. I mean, like we would just have moments where we're doing something and we just break down crying, because we're really trying to get these emotions out. We're really trying to get centered. Yeah, you said
somebody
would
be chopping kale in the kitchen and onions and they'd start to cry and freak out.
Yeah, it was like that. So I guess it's not that wild or intense. Maybe intense is the best word. So much anymore, but certainly
it almost sounded a little cult-like at times in the past, because there's like a lot of the staff members, the teachers that are teaching these classes, they'll say stuff like Kripalu saved my life.
Right.
And things like that. Or they're like a former addict of some kind, and they've been clean for a long time since they found Kripalu.
Yeah, that's exactly what they'll say. But, now, like my experience of it, and
it didn't feel culty at all now.
Exactly.
At all.
Exactly. Didn't even feel close.
It was very, like, there wasn't any specific agenda except for you to be happy and for you to just, I guess maybe do some personal growth,
right,
or just do whatever you feel that you need to do on your path. And they weren't specific about that at all. It was all just to support you in whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, and during the yoga classes, I mean, I did yoga with you the whole time, and I mean, they're very like understanding. They're not like, oh, you're doing it wrong. They're like, there's no cracking of the whip of any kind.
Oh yeah.
They allowed me to wear like my 5 fingers, as to where I think traditionally you're supposed to be completely barefoot or something. I mean, like it's really, really laid back, quite frankly.
It is really laid back. Yeah.
And that's enjoyable, because actually I think the world fucking needs that. Like it needs to be, take it easy. It's okay.
Yeah, I agree. Like even sometimes in some yoga spaces, you can feel a lot of judgment. Like if you don't have the nice, like the newest leggings or whatever,
oh yeah,
like this girl does or whatever, or if you don't have like a perfect butt and your yoga pants or whatever, well, you're not good enough.
This is something you commented on. Like you didn't care. Like I agree. I don't think anybody gave a shit what they were wearing.
Everybody was so laid back.
Yeah.
You'd see people wearing like a hat with their hair just piled up. No, there were an abundance of women there, mostly women, but none of them were wearing makeup. Nobody was wearing makeup.
Yeah, I was impressed.
Yeah, I mean that's a real sign.
I mean, if people want to wear makeup, that's fine. But I'm just saying, like me personally, I'm all for a world without it. But
well, it's like. I get that, Brian, but like,
yeah.
It reminded me of another space in which nobody wore makeup, which was the all-girls camp that I went to when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it reminded me a lot of that, actually, the good parts of it. And yeah, I just thought that was really interesting because, you know, in the world there is like a lot of pressure and judgment for women to look a certain way, but I think that I think that the people who were at Kripalu really felt like that they were getting outside of that judgment and pressure to look a certain way. And so they were just, you know, like being comfortable. And that includes just, I mean, like I literally wore slippers walking around this place.
Right.
And it was great. And a lot of other people were wearing slippers or socks or flip-flops or, you know, and you take your shoes off when you go into one of the rooms for a yoga class and leave them in a little cubby outside. And there's blankets, you know, like they have yoga seats and blankets and all kinds of stuff. So it's just very comfortable and just no one like thinks twice about your appearance. Or
it felt
judges.
very much like a no judgment zone.
Yeah, I felt very accepted.
Which is interesting because this, and I want to get on a couple tangents with this. One is, this isn't cheap. Like this place is not a cheap thing to do. You know, it's cheaper if you stay in the dorm housing, but yeah, that's right. Right.
But consider that it is all inclusive. So you're getting three incredibly delicious hippie
world-class meals
a day.
Yes, literally world-class. Yeah.
All these yoga classes, all these other classes.
Yep.
You know, access to the whole grounds and space and the accommodations. So, I mean, consider that when you think about the cost. But
no, right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like, you know, you get a lot of value, but you pay, you know, you're going to pay every penny for that value, but it's worth it. It's worth every penny. I mean, you're getting all the value you could get for that amount of money, whatever. So, but my point in bringing that up is that these are people who probably outside of there may very much care about their appearance. And all of that, you know?
Yeah.
Because they're probably in, you know, certain walks of life, you know, certain jobs, whatever that may be. And so it's fascinating that this is a place where, and look, I was one of maybe literally 3 guys, not counting the help, not counting the workers there. I was one of maybe 3 guys in the whole joint, you know, during that time frame. I think I can think of only 2 other guys, maybe 3, maybe 4. But that's it. Everybody else, and we're talking about a place that can handle some odd 600 to 900 people. Everybody else was women. And I think it's remarkable because, you know, there's this trope that gets schlepped around. There's a stereotype that people believe that, oh, women are constantly judging each other. Women are constantly, you know, like they're just catting at each other and everything. And if you get a bunch of them together, they're just going to fight, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
None of that was happening. It was the exact opposite. Everybody was just smiling at each other. Everybody was so kind and so nice. I mean, it was the antithesis. Bullshit that women act like some kind of craziness when they're alone and
fighting
get them
over the few men that are there or something.
Oh, yeah, that wasn't happening. Yeah. No.
No, you know, it's really interesting actually because I think like there were a lot of women there that were heterosexual or at least had male partners, but their male partners refused to go with them.
Oh, but one of the guys that was there with him, though, he didn't want to do any of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And there was one woman that was mad, but she wasn't mad at the other women. She was mad at the dude. Hey, you know, we're here. You want to spend some time with me? And, of course, me thinking, well, yeah, motherfucker, do something with this gal. You know, have a good time.
Well, there were a few women that I just chatted with, and they said things like, oh, you know, next time I wish my boyfriend or husband would come with me because he really needs it or something, or he really needs to come here, but he wouldn't go this time. And you came with me, Brian, and you participated.
Both times.
Yep, exactly. And you were interested in what was going on, and you experienced it, and you were happy to be there. So that was awesome to have that experience with you.
I loved it. And this is the thing, guys, if you're like, oh, yoga's for girls, or if you're...
No, it's really not. Yoga's for everybody. In fact, yoga was really invented by men, you know, and it was
originally women weren't allowed to do it, right?
For a long time. Yeah,
right.
Women weren't allowed to do it.
Yeah, quite the opposite. So, yeah, you're missing out. If you're not doing this kind of stuff, if you're not hitting up yoga retreats and all this shit, I mean, you are absolutely missing out, you know? And I didn't really experience anybody that was kind of like one of those, like, you know, nutty YouTube, you know, kind of slapstick acts where like the guy's like, oh, I am one with the universe. You gotta,
you
know,
mean like J.P. Sears?
Yeah,
like
yeah, all that kind of
spiritual
crap.
guy.
None of the guys there nobody was acting like that, which was great.
No, nobody was acting like that. I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting observation. Obviously, yes, I was enjoying the hell out of, just being surrounded by women. But part of the reason
I was too, honestly. I don't get to be in many spaces like that. And you know what it made me realize too? Like, I have been in a lot of male-dominated spaces.
Yeah.
From science to the Bitcoin world to the libertarian community to, I don't know, just I've spent a lot of my working and professional life and social life in spheres that were dominated by men,
Sure.
and not too many that were dominated by women. I was never in a sorority. I never really had a big group of girlfriends or anything like that. I had trouble making friends as a kid. I did go to an all-girls camp, but it was a religious Jewish camp, and I had a mixed experience there, not all of it was good. So I really loved being at Kripalu because it was like it was a break from the usual. It was like I have never experienced anything like that, an environment like that in my regular everyday life. And in fact, many of the environments that I've been in have been exactly the opposite: male-dominated, competitive, judgmental, that's pressure-filled environments.
That's what I was going to say, is that
unsafe environments, where, there's a lot of harassment and stalking behavior sometimes that goes along with that. And, at Kripalu, it is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
And that's the point I was going to get at. Not like, oh, I'm surrounded by women. I mean, look, of course I appreciated this too. There's beautiful women around, obviously very intellectual women. You could tell by the conversations being had and everything, like, oh, that's really hot. That's great. Sure. But the main thing was so much of that, I don't want to use the term spirit, but like the conventional male attitudes and platitudes weren't fucking there, and it just felt like such a relief. None of the competitiveness, like you said, not a lot of the judgment and all that stuff, just none of the bullshit that, like, you didn't even, in fact, they briefly brought up ahimsa, right?
Ahimsa is nonviolence.
Yeah, nonviolence. They even briefly brought that up, but I mean, like, there's just so many things that just aren't a part of the program when you don't have a bunch of fucking dudes around, and it was just, it was so nice.
I'm not even saying that all men are...
No, I'm not saying hashtag
I'm
all
not
men.
saying all men are competitive or judgmental,
Right.
or anybody can be competitive and judgmental.
Yep.
And I'm not saying all men are violent or that all men are dangerous or anything like that. It's just that for whatever reason, those environments that I described, there is a lot of that competitiveness and judgmentalness, leaving aside the gender composition of those places. They're just like that for whatever reason. And Kripalu wasn't like that. It was a break from the ordinary. And it also happened to be dominated by women.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say the conventional attitude, like that often comes along with that gender.
I don't know. Do you think that's more like American culture or certain subcultures in American culture? That competitiveness, and like most workplaces are like that, right?
Yeah,
it's a corporate culture that's sort of like expects you to be attached to your phone, 24/7 and always available, and just killing yourself, like never mind sleep, never mind food, don't check in with yourself or how you feel. Kripalu was exactly the opposite of that. It was encouraging you to tune in to what's inside and what you feel and what you need, and accept it and observe it without judgment, and not to be attached to your phone and not to define success by what other people say is success, but by your own happiness, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's solely American, though. Like, I think that's that kind of attitude. I think it has more to do, not to say it has to be defined by a gender, but it appears to largely be. And it has to do with a lot of those, again, kind of male-dominated spaces. And I want to look into this more, and I've been inspired to look into it more after our second visit particularly. But I kind of wonder just how different yoga was when it was more male-dominated. I partly wonder if the very peaceful, calm, or more calm notions of yoga and all that, I really wonder if that's not a byproduct of it sort of being like taken over by, women in America. or, being dominated, I guess you could say, even though that'd be a misnomer of a term. But yeah, I wonder about that. If that's kind of a newer development, in how that comes.
Well, I got a book about Ayurveda in the gift shop because I was interested in it. And we'll talk about some of the talks that we saw, but one of the talks we saw was like an introduction to Ayurvedic eating principles or something. It was called The 3 Pillars of Health. And so it was about food, sleep, and loving relationships. And I got interested in what does Ayurveda say about this? I was curious, like, what does Ayurveda say about dentistry? What does it say about this and that? And like, what is the doshas and what is that? So I went to the gift shop and I got a book about Ayurveda that looked comprehensive. And I read it, and it was written by a male practitioner. And it said Ayurveda had some stuff to say about sex. And one of the things it said was don't do oral or anal sex, because they both upset the balance.
Ever?
Yeah, that they'll cause vata imbalances, which is one of the doshas. The doshas are like these 3 elements of health and constitution.
Well,
and when they're out of balance, you get diseases and bad shit happens. And they also said
failed that while we were there. I'll tell you that right now.
And it also said don't have sex while menstruating. And don't do activities like yoga or even athletic activities while a woman is on her period. I'm like, oh man, definitely wrote that. But I mean, at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I can kind of see a little bit in that. It's like, I don't want somebody telling me like, no, you don't do this while you're on your period. But at the same time, like most of the time when I have my period, I really don't feel like working out.
Sure.
Or having sex much. So,
Right. Yeah, I can appreciate that. But I think that's crazy. Not that that's the only culture. I mean, the Romans thought that giving a blowjob was bad. They didn't have a problem with anal sex. But
well, they didn't practice what they preached much, did they?
But regardless, so the Ayurvedic stuff, there's a lot of room for disagreement in that. Like, I think science and a whole lot of other
there's some
things.
really good stuff in there. There's also some stuff I don't quite agree with. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting to read about. Just like anything, right? Like, you're never going to get 100% hit, but you take what you like and you leave the rest, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. That's interesting that you brought that up about sex. So I want to talk about that for a second. I want to talk about, sex. Like, this environment was, and again, it's not just because, again, like that there's beautiful women all around. It's really that really wasn't a part of it. It's the overall, the vibe, if I were to use a non-technical term, like the vibe, the aura of the place, it turned me on big time. It was inspirational and it turned me on.
Yeah, me too.
And the first night, like we needed to do something. but go ahead. I mean, because I did want to ask you, how did it make you feel? Anything like that?
It made me feel good. I mean, just not so much turned on, just like basically relaxed for once. Like so much of the time I am stressed out about something, whether it's a deadline or whether it's something I didn't get done or whether it's an email or whether it's a person or, whatever. I'm stressed out about something.
Right.
And there, I just wasn't stressed out. I was totally relaxed. And it was like just a really nice environment. I felt really supported. And I think a lot of the reason, like we've talked about before on various shows, a lot of the reason that people don't have sex or don't feel horny is because they're stressed. It's like stress is the ultimate sex killer. And so when you take that away, your natural freedom and horniness just comes out.
Right. Yeah. So you felt, you said you wouldn't use the term turned on, but like, were you feeling?
I just felt relaxed. I felt like all the weight was like removed, like all the stuff that usually weighs me down was like suspended.
Well, were you feeling more in touch with your sexuality at all? I mean, like, was there anything like that? That's kind of what I want to just quickly,
No, I didn't feel more in touch with my sexuality. I don't even know really what that means, but I think like maybe if we were going to a workshop about it or something, but the talks that we saw didn't focus on sex or sexuality.
No, not at all.
It was
Yeah.
it was all just spiritual stuff that
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
not sexual.
Right.
So no, I didn't really, I wouldn't say I it wasn't focused on sex for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Okay. So, well, then we'll move on, from that. Okay. So tell me about, I guess, what do you think were what was your favorite, if you want to give a description of the courses
Yeah.
obviously the yoga was great. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about that. The yoga was awesome. But like, as far as more of the courses and all of that, I know for one, you'll want to talk about Lee Albert, which was an amazing thing to see.
Yeah, that was really cool. That wasn't the only cool talk though. That I went to a lot of talks that I really liked. So, okay, I'll just go in chronological order. So,
Sure.
the first full day that we were there, the first talk I went to was about self-compassion, and this was by Coach Aruni. And like some people like, oh, Coach Aruni, like you're a little like potato Rooney or something, or I don't know. But her name is Aruni and she's a coach, so she calls herself Coach Aruni.
Yeah.
So anyway, she taught this class about self-compassion, and I really liked it. It was barely a class. It was more like a, not really like a sharing circle or anything, but like basically she said a little bit, and then she was like, so what does self-compassion mean to you? And how, she asked questions to the group of like, what do you think are some of the hardest situations to have compassion for yourself? Like, first of all, what is compassion
Right.
for other people, perhaps? And then what is self-compassion? What does that look like? What are some examples of having self-compassion? When is it the hardest to be compassionate towards yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And what area are you most struggling with right now that, you could have more self-compassion in, or you'd like to have more self-compassion? And what are some actionable, small little things that you could do to help bring more self-compassion into your life?
Sure.
And yeah, what struck me was how interactive it was. It was more like everybody being encouraged to think about those questions and maybe to say some of their answers, not all of them, but like maybe if you wanted to share, you could say your answers, and she would sort of write it down and make like a little mind map on a whiteboard.
Right.
But you didn't have to. It was more just to get everybody thinking in their own heads. And then, hopefully to take that thinking and carry it forward into the rest of your life. And she didn't mention nonviolent communication, but it definitely tied in a lot with my understanding of nonviolent communication,
Okay.
of like having self-empathy and self-compassion. She had some book recommendations, and she just had a great sense of humor and like a really nice way about her. And I had seen one of her classes before. It was about like healing from grief and loss.
Okay.
And it was kind of a similar format, and I liked her so much that I wanted to go back, and see her again. So that was one of the reasons I went back.
Yeah, and she has a newsletter that we actually get that's really
Oh, do you
solid.
get her newsletter? Yeah.
Well, it gets sent to me, anyway. So, so, all right. So you caught Coach Rooney.
Yep.
And
so,
then,
so went to that. Brian didn't catch that one because he was working.
Yes.
But that's the hard part about going midweek. Sometimes we had some stuff we had to take care of. But I went to that
Right.
class. And then I had a massage, my first massage. And this was like a regular, a traditional kind of, I guess, Western style massage. And, but it was a really good massage. Like the massage therapist was funny, like didn't talk too much, but she did a really good job of like finding my knots, even found some knots in the front of my neck, like the SCM muscle, which is the muscle that turns your head from side to side. She said, oh yeah, that's the talking muscle. And I said, oh, well, that must be because I talk all day. Yeah. So after that, I felt really good.
I have to say, because you got two massages.
Yeah, the first one was a Western style massage. The second one was Ayurvedic massage.
Yeah, and you were just absolutely glowing, like after both of them, and it was really like
good.
It really showed. And you're welcome to describe any more of what happened within those massages as you want. Mm-hmm. But anyway, please, go ahead and continue.
Okay, well, yeah, that massage was great, but there's not too much more remarkable to say about it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel really good. After that, we had lunch, and I think we should describe the food a little bit. Let's take a little detour, and we will talk more about the food because there were 2 classes that we went to that were food related.
Right. Go for it.
But just to paint a scene of this cafeteria, it is, first of all, it's all hippie food. Okay,
right.
So the style of the food is mostly vegetarian. Everything has few ingredients. It's like fresh foods that come from a hippie farm that's right nearby, seasonal stuff. They have a salad bar. They have a vegetarian main line and a non-vegetarian main line.
Mm-hmm.
They put a plate loaded up with food right outside the dining room so that you can see what is for lunch or dinner next to the menu.
Right.
Which I think is a really interesting way to show off what's on the menu because it's almost like a visual form of the menu, right? Like if you couldn't read, you would know what's for dinner.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So they have those.
And it gets you appetized, I guess.
Right.
So they have the vegetarian line and a non-vegetarian line.
Yes.
In the vegetarian line, they'll usually have a salad bar, several vegetables, side vegetable dishes. There's always some kind of kale.
Yeah.
Every day, every meal, there's some kind of kale. And then they have sort of the main dish. Now, it's some kind of lean meat, like turkey or chicken or a lean fish. But with the vegetarian one, they'll have some clever vegetarian substitute. For example, they had barbecue chicken one day, which was made with organic tomatoes and instead of barbecue sauce, And instead of chicken, it was jackfruit on the vegetarian line. They had fennel with Parmesan cheese one day, and then they had vegan cheese, which was made out of cashews and nutritional yeast, which I tried, and it was very good. They had turkey meatballs one day, and I forget what the... did you know what the vegetarian version of the turkey meatballs was?
I don't.
No, okay, never mind. Well, they had regular pasta and gluten-free pasta with that. So that was good. So they did have a lot of gluten-free options and dairy-free options. So that was good. And then they have this thing called the Buddha bar, which is Indian curries. They usually have dal, which is some kind of cooked lentils, heavily cooked, some kind of curried vegetable, sometimes tofu, sometimes not, sometimes beans or chickpeas or something like that.
Yeah.
And rice and a bunch of different veggie dishes. Then they have fresh house-made breads, gluten-free and not gluten-free. They have 6 different kinds of bread every day. They have fresh freshly ground peanut butter and almond butter that they make in-house. And then they have a sandwich bar with turkey and cheese and vegetables and egg salad, their own little egg salad and turkey, chicken salad and other stuff that you might put on a sandwich.
Yeah.
And they switch the items around. So there's a huge variety of food. Most of it is vegetarian. I will say that I had a really hard time staying low on the carbs and getting enough protein and fat.
The exact opposite of the way that you and I usually eat. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say it's the exact opposite because I do eat gluten-free and dairy-free because I'm allergic to those foods.
I'm saying that high carb, low...
Yeah, we usually try to eat low carb, high fat, high protein.
Yeah, this was the opposite of that in that
this
regard.
was high carb, low fat.
Yeah, but otherwise it was very respectful towards gluten-free and so, a lot of this other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think their philosophy was that most people aren't really completely intolerant of something like gluten or dairy. You just need to get your shit in balance and then you can digest a little bit of it in moderation, but you have to get that digestive fire going or whatever. So, but they did have a lot of gluten-free and dairy-free options. So that was good. But they didn't seem to treat it like it's a poison or something like that. You know what I mean? So it wasn't it's not like it's a dedicated gluten-free facility, but they had a lot of gluten-free stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're celiac, it'd be a problem, but yeah.
Right. Now, I mean, the best spot to really get your protein and fat and stuff like that was actually the sandwich bar.
Yeah, that's right.
Where they just had tons of turkey slices, turkey meat and
well,
cheese.
you couldn't really get any fat if you couldn't eat the cheese, because that was my situation.
Yeah, if you can't do dairy, you'd have a problem. Yeah.
I ended up having the egg salad a couple times.
Yep, that was good.
You would also sneak me some eggs from the breakfast, because I
hard-boiled
didn't
eggs,
get up in time for the breakfast, but you got me some hard-boiled eggs from the breakfast, so that was good. I had, a lot of that peanut butter. I had, there one day they had guacamole.
Yep, that was
they
great.
Had, like, turkey tacos.
Taco Tuesday was fucking amazing.
Yeah, it was really good. They're like, good turkey taco meat, and then like guacamole and all kinds of toppings and vegetables that you would put on a taco, roasted tomatoes and stuff like that. It was really good. But yeah, the food was great. I mean, you could tell it was fresh ingredients, and it was like very flavorful. We saw a cooking demo with the chef one night, which we'll get to. Yeah. But other than the food, they have almond milk on tap, like I mentioned. They also have like a big selection of teas. And on the teas, they have little Ayurvedic guidelines where it's like, okay, this balances this type of dosha, and this this reduces pitta and increases kapha or whatever. Yeah. Like, so that was really interesting. And they have spices, as we mentioned, on all the tables. They have Himalayan salt, cinnamon, cayenne, turmeric. Yep. Anything else? I think that's it.
Yeah, there was probably a few others. Like they would have Tabasco sauce would be there, sauce. Which whatever,
Yeah, you didn't need it. I mean, it was very, very flavorful stuff. So and then they have little tables where you can go and sit down, and there's like at times there's hundreds of people in this dining room.
Literal hundreds, yeah.
And then when you're done, you bust your trays and you put them in this little rotating conveyor belt, and then somebody else, clears off the plates. And they have these signs on the tables as part of their little flip menu that say like, what happens to my leftovers? Well, it becomes compost, and the compost goes to this local farm, and they mix it with like bark mulch, and then they sell it to other farms around the area. Yeah. So even your leftovers are making a difference, So it's really nice. And they have like beautiful art through the cafeteria as well. Yeah. They have like a lot of Buddha pictures and like, pictures of like probably like Hindu gods and goddesses, I guess. And, but they're pretty. They're not like obnoxious kind of religious.
Not at all. Yeah.
Stuff. It's like pretty, and then they have like nature scenes. And of course you can look out the window and see the trees.
Huge windows. Beautiful. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a nice environment to eat in.
Yeah. So, all right, another course that you hit up.
Okay. So yeah, after that, that afternoon was a.
Well, go to the high notes. Like,
okay.
We can go to. Let's do Lee Albert. Let's talk about that, because I mean, there was the course that was the first one we went to, which talked about like kind of the history of Kripalu. Mm-hmm. We don't really need to cover that.
Okay, yeah, we did do the history of Kripalu. Yeah.
I'll just say quickly, like the history of Swami Kripalu, like if social media existed at that time, A, I don't think he could have become Swami Kripalu, but B, I think a lot of what his story supposedly is, just, I get the sense it might have been BS. Like, really? I don't buy it that he learned from this great teacher that they just called teacher. They never found out the guy's name. Yeah. For 20 years, he sits on this stuff. Yeah. And then not literally, maybe literally, but for 20 years, he sits on what he learned. The teacher only
gives him two poses.
Right. And then he suddenly, holy shit, 20 years later,
he decides he's
Swami
ready
Kripalu.
To become a Swami. Yeah. And then he starts meditating. He does it for an hour. He does this alternate nostril breathing, which is one of the pranayama exercises, the breath work exercises.
Right.
And we did the pranayama thing for a minute, and we all started to get a little bit high and loopy.
Yeah, from this like funny breathing.
And the guy goes, "Can you imagine doing this for an hour?"
Nope.
At 6 a.m., noon, 6 p.m., and midnight. This is what he did for an hour. He did this for 4 hours a day.
Yeah, no way. Yeah, so anyway, I just, whatever, legends, it's how these things happen.
Yeah, it felt a little bit like a legend.
Yeah. So regardless, anyway, that was that. But let's talk about Lee Albert.
Okay, cool. So this was really cool. So I had seen in the category in the catalog of services for the massage place that you could get this thing called positional therapy. And what is positional therapy? Well, it's a technique to help relieve chronic pain and to bring your body into alignment. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting, but I don't know. Is it really going to feel as good as a massage? So I decided not to do that.
Right.
But then I saw that the person who not invented positional therapy, but was a proponent of it and was speaking about it and offered it at the massage place, was giving a talk. So I said, ooh, let's go to that talk. So we went to his talk. The guy's name is Lee Albert. He's like a neuromuscular therapist. He's a physical therapist, basically.
Yep.
And the basic idea of this thing called positional therapy is that the muscles that we think are, when we get pains, like for example, a lot of people get pain in their shoulders, right? Between their shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes people get pain in their neck, right? In the back of their neck. Or they'll get pain in their back, low back. Well, everybody says, oh, my shoulders are so tight. Or my hamstrings are so tight and that I think that's why my back hurts. Or my neck is so tight. Well, the muscles that we think are short and tight are tight, but they're actually long and tight. And what happens like when you stretch a rubber band? It becomes long, but it also becomes tight.
Right.
And so that's what those muscles that we feel pain in are like a stretched out rubber band where they're long and tight. And so stretching them more isn't going to help because they're already stretched to their limit, and that's why they're tight. So in order to relieve that chronic pain, we have to shorten those long, tight muscles by stretching the opposing muscles. And muscles work in pairs, so there's always an opposing muscle. So for example, people sit all day in a chair and they slump over and they round their back and they round their shoulders. And then they have pain in between their shoulders and in the back of their neck, right? So those would be the muscles, the shoulders, the rhomboids in between the shoulders, and the neck extensors, I guess, in the back of the neck. Those would be the muscles that are long and tight. So what should we do to relieve that? Well, we should do kind of a back bend and stretch out the front of the neck and the chest because those are the opposing muscles to the back of the neck and the shoulders.
Yeah.
And so, but you have to hold it for you have to hold the stretch for a minute.
Yes.
That's what he said. For the muscle memory to kick in where those long tight muscles get shortened enough to the point where they get a little bit of relief, you have to hold the stretch for a minute, and you have to do it, a couple times a day at first. And it can take a few months to sort of train your body to get back into alignment. But once you do, the chronic pain is going to be relieved, and it relieves it after you stretch the opposing muscle as well. So. Yeah. So he basically went through a list of all different types of chronic pain and said, okay, this is the counter stretch that you do for that type of pain.
Yeah, this was amazing because, and I mean, it felt almost like
it almost felt like a church thing, like a magical, where the pastor's like blowing people over.
Yeah, Benny Hinn. It was like a Benny Hinn show. He kind of comes on, and the guy, was fairly charismatic. I mean, he was an older guy, but he knows his stuff.
He's a small older guy, but he's like he has a really good way of explaining things.
Right. Yeah. So how he starts it off is he asks, he's like, okay, who has this kind of pain? Who has this kind of pain?
Yeah. And he brings people up for a demo.
Right. And he has the person come up and he has them sit down. And I mean, and it really does look kind of religious because like the sort of the bed, the medical bed that's there looks like an altar.
He had like a massage
table. Yeah. It looks like an altar. And, so he has the person come up, and the first person that came up, she had tennis elbow. And all he did was like touch a certain part he had her do the stretch with her hand.
Right. So the person had tennis elbow, which is called lateral epicondylitis.
Right.
Epicondyle is the elbow and lateral is the outside. So
Yep.
It's pain on the outside of your elbow. So, and for this, a lot of physical therapists will say, well, stretch your wrist down, make a fist, and then curl your fist in towards your arm.
Right.
And that'll stretch that muscle. Well, that's actually the wrong muscle to stretch. So what he did instead was have her take her fingers and like stretch them back toward her forearm.
Yeah, pointing upwards.
Yeah,
right.
Pointing upwards, stretching the wrist that way, back toward stretching flexing the wrist, right, toward her arm. I don't know really how to describe it. And hold that for a minute. And that shortened that muscle.
And the pain went away.
And the pain went away.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm watching this, I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, somebody started playing, it's like Steve Martin, somebody started playing the music.
At first, he sort of pressed on her elbow and was putting very little pressure on it. She was like, ow, that hurts, hurts. And then after she held the stretch for a minute, he pressed on the same spot in her elbow, and she's like, oh my God, it's better.
Yeah, I mean, that's the
and
thing.
And the people are amazed.
Right. He kept bringing people on. I mean, and as soon as he did that, people just started asking questions like, holy shit, what did you just do? And he just keep bringing up various people. You went up there, and
this was really interesting. He said everybody's pelvis is fucked up.
Yeah,
people's pelvis is out of alignment, and there's 3 ways it's out of alignment. One is a rotation, one is one hip higher than the other, like a side to side, and the other one is a tilt. So you can have most people have an anterior tilt of their pelvis. So they're kind of like sticking out their butt, I guess, in their posture. And people think it's caused by tight hamstrings, but actually it's not. Usually the hamstrings are overstretched. And what do people do in yoga classes? A bunch of forward folds and overstretch their hamstrings.
Right.
When that's actually not the right thing to do. A lot of times back pain is caused by tight quads and tight psoas, which are the hip flexors.
Yes.
So he talked about that. But anyway, he was saying everybody's pelvis is out of alignment. And he says, whose feet flop out to the side when they lay down on their back? And I said, ooh, mine do that.
Right.
And he goes, come on up here. What's your name? And I said, I'm Stephanie. And so he goes, okay, Stephanie, lay down on this table. And then I did, and my feet flopped out to the side. And he goes, see that? That's not in any anatomy textbook. Your feet aren't supposed to flop out to the side. They're supposed to be straight. And so he says, okay, Stephanie, I'm going to just move your foot like this. And he put one of my feet or one of my legs in a stretch to stretch the outside of, the outside of the hip or the outside of the leg, and held it for a minute.
Yep.
And then that foot was straight and the other foot was still flopping out to the side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was
incredible.
It was wild what he was doing. And his claims were very interesting in that he was saying, there's a couple claims in particular I want to bring up, but like one that he talked about, he said in like the ancient Chinese.
Yeah.
He said they used to walk up hills backwards.
Right. Because you spend, so the way that a lot of people get back pain, and the way that the quad, which is caused in his ideas by, tight quads and tight psoas. And the reason why people have tight quads and psoas is because we spend most of our life, running, doing ab exercises, right? Crunching, sitting down, right? Driving. We're constantly in these positions where we're contracting those muscles, right?
Right.
To fold forward. There's really no situation in our life where we're doing like a back bend naturally.
Right.
Or we're putting our legs, behind us or something like that to stretch out the quads and psoas. And also there's not much, we do a lot of strengthening of those muscles too. The quads, like whenever we run or walk, we're strengthening those hip flexors, but we don't do a lot of strengthening of the back of our legs, of the glutes and hamstrings.
Yeah.
So there's an imbalance there. And so he said the Chinese, ancient Chinese, suggested walking backwards up a hill. And then he said to everybody, go out there and try this. There's a hill in the front of Kripalu.
Yeah.
Go out there and try to see if you can walk backwards up the hill. Most people have to stop halfway because they get tired. And that's because your glutes and your hamstrings are weaker than your quads.
Yeah. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, holy shit, I'm going to be doing this, because there's so many, like a major injury that happens with so many athletes, bodybuilders and whatever, is a quad tear where it'll just roll up their leg. And it is the scariest fucking thing. And I'm just like, oh man, if they just did that, like that explains it, why that's such a weak and tender muscle. And I thought it was just brilliant. It was such a simple explanation as for what's going on. It blew my mind. But then he went so far as to say, he says, most of these problems just originate with the pelvis because people's pelvises aren't aligned. And he proved it. He showed it. He showed people, and he straightened out people's pelvis, and everything. He
showed people, and he would like compare their ankles. He would have them lay down. He would grab both of their ankles and see if they lined up. Oftentimes one of them was an inch or half inch above the other one. Yeah. And so is one of their legs shorter? No, that's very rare. It's usually that one of their hips is hiked up. Right. So it appears that one of the legs is shorter, but you can stretch. That's the quadratus lumborum muscle in the back that does that hikes up the hip. And you can stand on a step and dangle one of your feet off the side of the step, and it'll stretch out that muscle. Yeah. And then it'll get your hips to be even. Yeah. And it'll correct that imbalance.
Yeah. And I mean, and his claim overall was, he said, if people would just straighten out their pelvis. Yeah. He said,
we could get rid of half of healthcare costs.
Exactly. That's exactly what he said.
Because back pain is like $10 billion or something every year.
Yeah. And he said so many of the different things that you can do. Now, this guy has a couple books out there. One of them is like a yoga book that says the same thing as the book that's not a yoga book.
Yeah.
But
Yoga for Pain Relief
right.
by Lee Albert. And then the other one is like Live Pain-Free Without Drugs or Surgery.
Right. And the reason that he made that other book, the one that's not yoga, is because he said there's just people out there, unfortunately, when they hear the word yoga, they just won't touch it.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
He said this stuff doesn't need yoga to be proven. It just is. And I'll put links to those books in the show notes.
Yeah.
I totally recommend. You picked up a copy of it.
I did, yeah, and I did their exercises this morning. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do
hell
this
yeah.
every day, yeah.
Same here. Yeah, I picked up a copy for my Kindle. The books are like $30 a pop, but the Kindle version for the yoga book is only like $3, which that's totally worth it. So anyway, I thought that was amazing. That was
blew
certainly
my mind.
Yeah, that was definitely the most eye-opening course or talk, whatever, that we went to there, in my opinion. Like that was just mind-blowing to see that. And I'm so glad, actually, for myself, at the stage of fitness that I'm at, I'm glad to have seen that, because I'm getting into for me personally, I'm getting into the realms where like I could really injure myself pretty bad if I'm not particularly careful. So I'll be happy to implement a lot of this. So I recommend people do check out these books, and if anything, just start walking backwards up hills or something. It's really amazing. But anyway, so that was great. That was really cool. What other? There was the cooking show that we saw, which I don't know how much to say about that. Just the lead cook for Kripalu.
Yeah, the head chef. Jeremy
something. He put on the show to explain how they go into like what they do to make the food, how you can make the food that gets made at Kripalu.
Yeah, they had a professional demo kitchen with cameras on the stove
whole thing,
and everything.
Like I said, it was like sitting in an Emerald Live. It was the same damn thing.
He gave you tips on how to cut up certain vegetables.
Right.
He gave you tips on vegetarian cooking, and
Now this was like watching a TV show, because it was so funny. Like this guy was pure entertainment. And just did a lot of hilarious stuff, all relevant very much to Kripalu and all that, but then, whatever else was going on. But it was very entertaining. I don't know that I necessarily walked away really learning a whole lot, but it was super entertaining.
I learned a couple things, yeah. And I was entertained, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was entertained. It was hilarious. I mean, the whole room was just laughing their asses off. And that was so nice, too.
One of the funniest things he said was that before Kripalu had coffee, they used to not have coffee, now they do.
Oh, yeah.
He said before they had coffee, he got a comment on one of the feedback cards or one of the survey cards or something like that. Someone said, "I can't believe you guys don't have coffee. Not everyone is a vegan."
That was great.
That was so funny.
He had another saying. He says, "This is my great saying." It was, you can always add more, but you can't take away.
Yeah, right.
In
a recipe.
Yeah.
And he wanted a shrine to himself with like his chef coat. Like they have like a shrine to Swami Kripalu with his robe and his shoes, his sandals and his beads and stuff.
Right.
He wanted that for himself with a quote that says, "You can always add more, but you can't take it out."
Yeah. You can't take away.
Can't take away.
Yeah, that was funny. So that was really cool. Were there any other courses?
Yeah, there was that 3 pillars of health that we saw. That was the introduction to Ayurveda. That was really interesting.
Yeah, so this was interesting, because this is the one where I'm listening to it and I'm like, no, I don't agree with you. No, I don't agree with you. No, I don't agree with you.
Well, okay, we should talk about what she said. So this was Kat Passini. She was one of the Ayurvedic health coaches.
Yeah, wonderful woman, by the way. I'm not insulting her or anything, but yeah, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. So she was talking about Ayurveda, and there's the 3 pillars of health. Like, your health is built on a foundation, and there's 3 pillars to the foundation: food, sleep, and loving relationships. It was some Sanskrit word. It's not really loving relationships. It's like moderation, or like, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but some people interpret it as like abstinence. It's not really abstinence either. It's like some Sanskrit word that nobody really knows what it means. She didn't really spend too much time on that. She mostly spent time on food and sleep. But that was the 3rd pillar. Anyway, so sleep. Ayurveda says about sleep that, humans are diurnal creatures, right? We're meant to be awake when the sun's out and asleep when the sun's down. And that was where she said, you really get your best sleep from like, the deepest part of sleep is like from 10 p.m. to midnight.
Okay.
And you can't just shift it forward and sleep like, the same amount of time, but later, because it's based on the sun. It's based on the circadian rhythms in your body, and it's based on the sun.
Right.
So, like, all the hormones, like growth hormone and stuff, like you really have to get in bed early. And she's not the only one that says that. Like a lot of people talk about for athletic performance, yeah, you really do have to go to bed at 10 or 10 or 10:30, as early as you possibly can before midnight, basically.
Yeah, something I'm slowly starting to accept. Yes.
Yeah, I know. It took me a long time. I had to be worn down on that too, because I had a lot of mental blocks. Like, I didn't like somebody telling me when I have to go to bed, because it's like, I spent my whole life with people telling me, oh, you got to go to bed so you can get up for school. Like,
Right.
basically go to bed early so you can get up for something that you don't want to do. And why would I want to do that? So, of course, I didn't want to go to bed,
Yeah.
So I had to get over that and say, okay, well, I can get up early, but it has to be on my own terms. And just realizing that, you feel better when you do go to bed earlier, that was helpful. So anyway, I've actually, like I mentioned in the beginning of the show, I've been going to sleep earlier.
Yeah, I mean, and she recommended like no electronics.
Yep.
And I think there's fair arguments for some of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the e-reader is like the one piece of electronics. I mean, it's like a watch, or it's like the alarm clock, and nobody's going to say don't have an alarm clock or even, relegate yourself to a mechanical alarm clock. Just some of these devices don't irradiate almost any. Yeah, it kind of like the way the rules are about that. It really smacks of how the airlines were for so long until recently, when they finally
just
said
dogmatic about the
yeah, and then they finally said, "Holy shit, these things aren't transmitting anything. Like the human heart's probably transmitting more of an EM field than these devices are." So there's no way that they're messing with systems. Yeah, I mean, some things are bad. I agree. Like, sure, it's questionable. Okay, what's the fucking 4G? Blasting down next to you while you sleep and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of that. I understand.
Or
that.
shift work.
Sure,
like, shift work is bad, and she did say like, sometimes it's unavoidable, but you have to sort of try to do the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
the sleep stuff was interesting, but there was 3 parts. There was sleep.
Food
was the next one. This is where there was a lot of debate.
Yeah. Okay. So food. Oh God, this covered everything from how many times a day to eat, when to eat, what to eat, how much to eat, how much to drink, what kind of things to drink.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So basically they said Ayurveda says 2 to 4 meals a day is optimal. Lunch should be your biggest meal.
Yep.
Because there's this thing that Ayurveda calls like the digestive fire, right? And that's like the enzymes and the acids that break down your food in modern science terms, but they called it the digestive fire. And she would say stuff like, well, what happens if you, like the fire analogy, she would say, like, what happens if you throw cold water on a fire? Well, it goes out. And that's why you shouldn't drink cold water with meals, because it will extinguish the digestive fire.
Yeah, she was like, always drink warm water.
Yeah. And then she said it like dilutes the enzymes and stuff. And, well, I mean, maybe to a certain extent, but you're going to resorb a lot of that water too. So I don't know how much you really dilute it. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of true. Like cold water does kind of paralyze the stomach a little bit and slow it down. Right.
Yeah, well, I've heard arguments that like drinking really cold water could give you a heart attack or something like that.
I don't know about that.
Well, I think it's with people that are already susceptible to that sort of thing. But regardless, yeah, I mean, I felt like, just quick, I felt like she was putting up a lot of naturalistic fallacies. I felt like, like these arguments from nature, and it was weird. Like she's saying, oh, humans aren't meant to like eat raw food and everything's supposed to be cooked.
Raw food is bad. They say try to eat mostly cooked food in Ayurveda because it's already been started to be digested. But then there was this weird thing about like certain foods are like already cooked by the sun on the vine a little bit. Like cucumbers and squash and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but carrots and onions are underground, so they never see the sun, so they're not cooked, so they're really hard to digest raw. So it's like, I was like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, this is where things were feeling like, now you're kind of making shit up. Like, I mean, like that, or not that she did, but whoever the Ayurvedic.
Well, I mean, it is kind of true. Like, if you eat a lot of salad or like raw vegetables, sometimes you do get gas, so I could see how that could lead to it'd be like hard to digest, I guess.
Yeah, I just like I also,
we don't eat a lot of raw meat.
Right. Well, that's true, but then maybe we did. I mean, maybe humans did. And I get it, like cooked food is what, allowed for our brains supposedly to be the size that they are. I've heard that research, real like full on science research on that. I get a lot of this stuff, but yeah, there were some like the digestive fire, some other things. I don't know. They just, it really felt like, and then also
yeah, you only need like the amount of food that you can fit in your two hands. Like if you cup your hands together, I was like, that's not enough food. There was some stuff in there that I think that was kind of true, but I didn't like to hear. But there was also some stuff in there that you could maybe find some disagreement with. I agree.
Yeah, or like and this is something I remember hearing as a kid, because Adventists were really big on this, and I think maybe even some vegans talk about this sort of thing, is that you don't mix fruit and vegetables.
Oh,
like
yeah.
They can't digest together.
There's certain foods in Ayurveda that you're not supposed to mix. It's mostly like milk and fish, milk and meat, milk and fruit.
Sure. Yeah, and
which orange and milk, yeah, not a good combination. There's milk gonna curdle in your stomach or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know, maybe it would when it hits your stomach anyway, because the stomach acid.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I'm so programmed like paleo and intermittent fasting that this like stood in contrast to all that. Which, yeah, it's just a quick course. It's not like a full book by Gary Tubbs or something like that, which, those are heavily researched, or something by Mark Sisson. But anyway, I debated some of that, but I'm intrigued to, I know you're reading the book on Ayurveda right now, which I assume that's going to describe some of the food stuff in more detail.
Oh yeah, lots more detail.
Yeah.
It has like lists of foods that the different types or constitutions should eat or not eat or blah, blah, blah. So.
Right. I'll be intrigued to hear more about that as you dive into that. So
yeah, another thing was like foods have different qualities. So she said like, well, who naturally loses interest in, eating salad in the winter? And it's because like we're meant to eat seasonal foods. Like, you should adjust the types of foods you eat to the seasons and what's available. So.
Yeah, that was something else I disagreed with. She's like, you wouldn't be able to eat salad in winter. And I'm like, no, lettuce is one of the things that absolutely like can handle growing in the winter under the right, under not so altered conditions, without using really technology. I mean, a cold box, things like, I don't know, like it just doesn't. Yeah, I really felt like there was a lot of naturalistic fallacies going around with that, and whatever. I mean, I get it. So, and I'm intrigued to kind of learn more about it. So,
well, I mean, even if we have little quibbles with some of the stuff that was said,
yeah,
I definitely agree that food and sleep are the pillars of health.
Yep. Oh, agreed.
That's
totally
the foundation for everything. And there was a quote in there that I really liked too. That was something about, when food is correct, medicine is of no use. And when food is when food is correct, there's no need for medicine. When food is incorrect, medicine is of no use.
Right. Yeah. No, and see, now I can kind of dig that. Okay, I can agree with that. And in fact, it reminds me of, I just mentioned Adventists, it reminds me of something their little prophetess Ellen G. White said, where she said something to the effect, the more doctors there are, the more sick people there are. Mm-hmm. One leads to the other.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, I can kind of get that. And I can appreciate all that. I mean, and a lot of the abstract notions being described, I agree. Just like every diet says, the reason why I always say this, the reason why every diet, whatever it is, Long Beach, you name it, that like starts off and it really seems to work for you is because it's getting you away from processed foods.
Yeah.
And that's why that'll take off for you at first.
Yeah, Ayurveda definitely says that, like whole natural foods, not processed.
Yeah, and the third pillar, I really agreed with a lot of it, which was like getting distractions out of the way, and being more intentional with your time and stuff like this. Yep, absolutely. Like I have no argument actually with any of that. Get the screens out of your face for a little while. Turn off all of the sensory. Whatever overload. Yeah. I mean, whatever's, and great. I was really, really on board with that. So, So that was fascinating. I think that covers the bulk of the courses that we caught. And
There was one more that was really good, and I just want to mention it quick because it was a compliment to Lee Albert's positional therapy talk.
Is this the psoas?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It was a yoga class called Love Your Psoas, and it was all about the psoas muscle, which is it's a fascinating muscle. It's a really big muscle that almost no one knows about.
Okay.
And it starts like all the way up in the back of your rib cage, and it kind of goes down the back of your abdominal cavity, and then it curves around. It goes through your hip. It goes through your basically the crest of your hip, and then it attaches to the inside of the leg bone, the femur.
Right.
So the action of that muscle, and it actually goes through the diaphragm as well. So it's connected with breathing a little bit because the diaphragm is the main muscle of breathing, right? And in animals, this is the tenderloin. So in us, it's the tenderloin too. We could think of it that way.
Okay. Tasty.
Yeah, tasty. And basically, the function of this muscle is to curl us up into the fetal position, right? And so it's related a lot to like fear and to like the fear response. And a lot of times when we feel afraid or we think we're going to fall or something like that, this muscle will tense up and tighten up and bring us into like a ball shape. And so in a lot of people, this is a tight muscle. And the way you stretch it is by doing like a lunge and the back leg that's out straight, going toward the back. When you do a little back bend, that's the side that your psoas muscle is being stretched on. And any kind of back bend will stretch it as well. So, so we did a yoga class that showed a bunch of different psoas stretches, and it was really good. I happened to wake up that day and my back was hurting. And, and I didn't talk about the Ayurvedic massage either yet, or the hot tub, so I will next.
Okay.
But anyway, the class was perfect because I stretched out the psoas. I was like, ooh, back pain. It's caused by tight psoas and quads, like Lee Albert said last night.
Yeah.
So I went to this class and it really made my back feel better. It was good.
Nice. Okay.
And that was Christy Newhart who taught that one.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she was really good. I mean, she was talking about, these yoga classes, everyone's doing these forward bends and they they keep their legs completely straight and they're like swan diving forward. But nobody really does that action in real life when you bend over. Like, it's not really natural to do that. So you don't have to keep your knees completely straight or anything. You don't have to have the best, straight knee back bend. It's not about that. It's about doing what's right for your own body. So that was some of that non-judgmental spirit. I like that a lot. So that was a great class.
All right. So tell me about this Ayurvedic massage.
Ayurvedic massage. So, okay. So this was called a Vashish, the type of Ayurvedic massage that I got. Yeah.
Okay.
And before the massage, I had to fill out a form. And the form had the 3 different doshas, or the constitutional types. Mm-hmm. And it said different symptoms that are associated with each one being out of balance. So it said like, are you feeling anxious? Are you cold? Do you have like water retention? Do you have inflammation? Like, is your skin inflamed? Are you hot? Like it had different things like that.
Sure.
So I had to check off different ones. And then the massage therapist looked at it and she picked one of the 3 oils that's supposed to balance the doshas. And she heated up this oil. And then also on the form that I had to fill out, it was, do you want traditional draping or Western style draping? Now, the Western style draping is like when you go to get a massage, if you're a woman and your tits up, your tits are covered. The traditional draping is tits out.
Woo. All right.
And there's a lot of lymph nodes like in your armpits and around the breasts and stuff. And so part of the point of this massage is to stimulate the lymphatic system. Okay. So they have to kind of work around the boobs to get the lymph nodes. And so I said, well, what do you think I said, Brian?
Tits out.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Tits out, tits out.
So I went for the full experience.
Woo.
So I filled out my form and she selected the oil. And it's a special oil that's like cooked in India with all these Ayurvedic herbs. And they mix it with like sesame oil or something like that. And then they heat up this big pot of it. They start out by pouring it in your hair. So they pour it in your hair and they massage your head and scalp with this hot oil.
Okay.
And then they start to pour the oil in other spots. So they pour it like up and down the front of the body. They put it on your legs, on your feet. They do it like half of body at a time. And it's really meant to stimulate the lymphatic system. So they go with like the flow of the lymph, and they kind of try to push the lymph, like, to circulate around. They go into your armpits and up your legs and all that stuff. And by the end of it, the entire body is covered with oil, including your hair. It's all in your hair.
Oh, yeah. You were wearing a bandana when you came back.
Yeah, that's right. It was my hair was soaked with oil, and my whole body was soaked with oil. And I put on my suit and my slippers, and I just said, I'm just going to let it soak in. And they say, keep warm and maybe take a hot shower or a hot, go in the sauna or something to let the oil soak in. They recommend that you leave the oil on until it soaks in for at least 24 hours.
Okay.
So I did. I left it in my hair and I left it on my body, and it soaked in, and I felt great. And it was a really cool experience. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you right after that, and once again, you're just glowing. You're like, wow, I feel really good. And
yeah, it was really nice.
That was awesome. So,
and I got to keep some of the oil, too.
Now, something I did there a lot, like I said, I took advantage of their gym. They had a very nice selection of dumbbells and some other, fairly basic stuff. But I like to keep my workouts really basic anyway. Intense, but basic. But while I was doing that, you were going down. Now, they don't have a hot tub or whirlpool for the men anymore because they had to put it in an elevator. Honestly, I have no problem with that. I talked about this in the last time I talked about, or my first review of Kripalu, because look, like I said, I was one of maybe 3 guys. Why the hell would you, have like this entire room running all this hot water for people that aren't even going to take, that there's really nobody to make use of it. And I like hot tubs fine, but admittedly, like, especially if I'm on some kind of retreat or something, and okay, for me, there's not much point in going in a hot tub if a woman's not going with me. Okay, that's
yeah. The fact that they're gender separated is kind of a bummer. I agree.
Yeah, I'm going to choose to go to the gym every single goddamn time. That's happening. So I don't care that that's not there. I can already hear people. What? I can't believe it that they don't have one for men. Fuck it. Okay, but
they
anyway,
do have a sauna though.
But they do have a sauna, which those are fun.
Well,
also, another thing I like to go with women in. But anyway, yeah,
it was a bummer that they were separated and I couldn't go with you. But I did. I took advantage of the sauna and the whirlpool, and I talked to some of the ladies in there. It was nice, very nice. We had a nice chat.
How far do you want to go without that? No.
What do you mean? How far? We were just talking.
We were just talking. Okay.
I was just being friendly. It's a nice atmosphere where, there's like camaraderie, and, it's bathing suits optional. So you can go in the tub with a bunch of women. It's a big tub. They have a hot one and a cold one. And, it's just really nice. It's very foggy in the room, and it just feels like a really nice place, like a Roman bath or something. Nice. And then there's a shower. And so, yeah, that was really like a nice enhancement to the whole experience going in there.
Yeah. So that was good.
That was really good. Really good.
Yeah, and you enjoyed that. You did that almost every day that we were there.
Yeah, I did.
But
I didn't go in the day after I had the oil massage because, you didn't want to clog up the whirlpool with oils.
Right. So, okay. So wrapping it up.
Yeah.
I mean, myself, I guess I'll say how I felt about it, in the end. Same thing where I felt like this was, vision of the future. It wasn't in space, which is where I really think the future is going to be. But, this is about how I pictured it would, it would kind of work out. The feeling, kind of that we talked about, sort of the, for lack of a better term, the aura, the vibe of the place, all of that was fantastic. Everybody kind of eating together, even like the style, even the silent breakfast. Like, personally, I'd be totally on board with the silent breakfast and just breaking out a book and whatever, like that's fine with me. Mm-hmm. A lot of that. Like, I think that, yeah, I don't know. I just, like, I see it, and that's, I just see that as one way of, like, that very peaceful future that, again, I never see the whole world becoming like this anarchist paradise, but I could see segments of it becoming a minor paradise just like that, where people really do have a completely different culture, a completely different way that they live. And, you could make that happen, and you could live like that. And I think it's really inspirational to see this sort of thing. I don't know. I haven't been to any other yoga retreats. I've only been to Kripalu twice. I don't know if any other yoga retreats are like this. But if they're anything like that, I mean, wow, go, listeners, hit one of these up, because it is amazing. It is really something to experience this level of peace and activity and physicality, the whole thing. And it's so nice to be somewhere where pretty much there isn't a TV around to be seen. I mean, it's just not there.
Yeah.
And people aren't constantly staring at their fucking phones. That part of it
that was amazing.
I love that.
Alone.
You're looking at people's faces, you're talking to people, and I mean, and we had some other good times as well. I mean, it was so nice. So I really, it really struck me, like a part of me, being there made me think of the kind of the almost joking quote, but it's a half jest, it's like, this is the future liberals want. And I'm like, yeah, kind of. I think this is sort of it.
I think of it as the best aspects of hippie culture.
Yeah.
I really do. There are a lot of stereotypes and negative things about hippie culture, but
I love hippies.
It just didn't seem to have any of those. I mean, this was like the best aspects of hippie culture. I really liked it. The only thing I will say is that I really didn't see a single Indian person there. And, not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I really didn't see very many people of color in general. It was like mostly white people. Mm-hmm. And not that that's bad necessarily or anything, but whenever I see a situation like that, I'm always a little bit curious why is that, especially when it's like focused around yoga, which is an Indian tradition.
Well, two things to that, and I understand your point, and we both commented on that it wasn't necessarily a very diverse crowd.
Yeah.
Two things. One is that well, we have institution, and people are going to freak out when I say this, but I don't care. There's institutionalized racism that affects a lot of, POCs economically. And like I said, this wasn't a cheap thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we went there with, your mother. I mean, like this was a, kind of a family thing. Mm-hmm. And, so that's part of it. The other part is that like a part of me is kind of glad there weren't Indian people there. Not that I have a problem with Indian people, quite the opposite. But because like that'd almost be a stereotype, like it's like going to, it's like, well, you can't really have a show about Kung Fu unless the lead guy is Chinese, it's like, well, why? That's racist. I mean, that's racist, to mm-hmm. say that, the Kung Fu guy has to be Chinese, No,
and it didn't feel like appropriative, really. It's just that it's a common thing in yoga mm-hmm. where I've read articles where Indian people complain about all the white Americans that are like yoga teachers and stuff who kind of like squeeze out people of color. Like they're not very welcoming to people of color, and it's just that it's dominated by like white women or whatever,
Sure.
Young white women.
Sure. I don't know that would have been a problem there, but I get your point.
No, I mean, I don't think it would have been unwelcoming to anybody. And in fact, in a lot of their pictures and the brochures and stuff, they mm-hmm. feature people of color very prominently. Yeah. Like all different kinds of people. And I think that the attitude would definitely be like, oh yeah, of course, like any human being is welcome here,
Yeah.
There's nothing that's unwelcoming to anybody who's not white. It's just that I think you're right, Brian, like demographically, white people tend to be the kind of people, white hippies are the ones who would be, like get attracted to a place like that and be able to afford it.
Yeah.
Like, to go there for the weekend or whatever for the week.
Yeah. Within our political economic
and also
climate.
It's Massachusetts,
Yeah, that's a huge part of it.
It's a cold climate. There's not many, I don't know. We had a, not that this is, I don't know. Not that this represents the way all black people feel.
Oh, I know. Okay? You're going to quote our friend.
There was this guy we were talking to once. He goes, "Where are you from?" And we said Boston. He goes, "Oh, Boston. That is no place for a black man." This was a black man who said this.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, "Well, no, there's black people in Boston. What are you talking about?" He's like, "No,
too cold. Too far north.
Yeah, too far north.
Too far north. Yeah. Yeah, exactly."
So, I mean, not that he speaks for all black people or anything like that, but maybe there are like more white people in northern climes where it's very cold. I mean, Vermont and New Hampshire are two of the whitest states in America.
Absolutely.
So
sure. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm glad you mentioned that, just because I was going to ask, is there anything like that could have made the experience better for you, or that like would be an improvement upon the place at all? Do you have anything else beyond those that you'd want to say?
Well, I do just want to say on that, like, every time there was a yoga class that was closing, or even like my massage therapist said this, they say this prayer of peace, of like, Om Shanti, like world peace. Like, think of all the vulnerable, the most vulnerable people in the world, the people who need it most, have like, love and protection, and may they feel the peace that we're feeling right now. It's like, so they're always thinking of like everybody in the world. They're including everybody, I guess, in a way by those prayers. But yeah, it would have been maybe nice to see a few more faces that were like different people walking around.
Okay, so diversity. That was,
I guess so.
Okay, mine isn't half as serious, but it seriously would have made it more like enjoyable for me. Honestly, like, since nobody was caring what anybody was wearing as far as clothing goes, I think it'd be awesome if the place was fucking clothing optional. I mean, like, if it was,
it was certainly warm enough in some places.
Oh yeah. They keep the heat up in there, and like, that's, like, let's just go all the way. Like, that's kind of the one aspect of the future, the vision of the future. I think that it was kind of missing, is that, who the hell needs clothes? Like,
well, I don't know.
I know. Okay. Yeah. You go outside in the winter like that. If I ever hear that argument one more time.
And I was going to say, like, you didn't really go to the men's sauna, but the saunas, the gendered spaces, the saunas are totally clothing optional.
Right. No, they are. But that's what I'm saying. So then let's just go all the way, and it's not to turn me on or something like that. It's just, that'd be like even more freedom of expression and of non-judgment and all that. It's just like letting it all hang out. I think that would be really
there's
awesome.
Places you can go for that too.
There are, but the food isn't as good.
Now, speaking of being inclusive, they even did have some like trans-friendly bathrooms, signage on the bathrooms.
This is true.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, didn't have like a locker room like that, but definitely trans-friendly bathrooms, so that's a plus.
Sure.
Although I didn't see anybody there who looked like very androgynous. Like, most of the women looked pretty feminine, even though they weren't dressed up or anything at the time.
Yeah. So I don't know. I can't think, other than that, I really can't think of any ways that I would want to like improve the place or something like that. I
thought it was great. I really thought it was great. There's very little to complain about. There's almost nothing to complain about.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more meat and fat.
I was going to say a little more protein.
Yeah.
And I'd be all right. I mean, maybe next time I'll bring my own like protein shakes or something. Next time I'll know better to do that.
Yeah, I'm sneaking in some pork rinds next time.
So, but
organic pork rinds, of course.
Yeah. So just an awesome experience. It was really cool. So, I will say thanks, Mom. And you can say thanks, Mom, as well if you want.
Thanks, Mom. We had so much fun.
Yeah, it was great. And it was really good to just connect with people and all that. That was awesome. Oh, shit. We didn't talk about the gift center.
Oh,
we teased it the whole time. All right, real quick. So yeah, there's a ton of crystals in there. They have like those healing bowls that make the sound and all that shit. All that stuff was in there. But the thing that impressed me was the book selection, because some of the, like 2 or 3 of the books in there were, in my opinion, like 2 or 3 of the most powerful books ever written in recent years. For one, The Body Keeps the Score. That was there, that we already mentioned. The other that shocked the hell out of me that was there, would you believe there was an economics book in there?
What was the economics book?
Yeah, it wasn't fucking Hoppe. Fuck that shit. Boy,
of course not.
If it was, I would have had words. Then I would not have been the smiling
There's
guy.
No way.
Yeah. But it was Charles Eisenstein, Sacred Economics, which is all about gift economies and all that. That book was there. They had quite a few copies of it. I thought that was, I was shocked to see that book there. I was, and impressed, shocked and impressed, because I think that's a tremendous book that offers a lot of food for thought. So Yeah, and there was a bunch of other books. Of course, they had the books that we mentioned from Lee Albert. Those were available there. That were
lots
all
of books about Ayurveda and cooking, and
right.
lots of books about trauma and healing from trauma. And they have like books that are themed with the classes and with the presenters. So yeah, they have like a lot of books there.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I mean, there was tons of clothes and all that other stuff. I mean, it's a gift shop, but I thought that those, Charles Eisenstein's book being there particularly, and Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah, that was impressive.
I thought that was great because like those two books, I think could change the world alone, or could change a person's life alone. So that was really something. Anyway, if I think of it, I'll link to all of these books in the show notes for this episode. And I will, of course, that'll go through the stuff.sexandsciencehour.com link, because if you want to hear more of Stephanie and I bantering back at each other, you can listen to Sex and Science Hour every Friday when it comes out.
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow.
Oh boy. Wow. Yes. So anyway, do you have anything else, Stephanie, you want to get out
No,
there?
I'm just really grateful I got to go to Kripalu, and it was
Same.
a really nice experience, and I'm trying to take it with me and continue some of the stuff that I thought about and learned. And yeah, I'm just really grateful to have that experience.
I think it'd be fun to go with a bigger crowd too.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree. Maybe we should do a Sovereign Tech retreat.
Yeah. A couple more ladies or something. I don't know. That could be fun. Yeah. All right. So
Not just
anyway,
ladies.
Well,
guys, everybody's welcome to.
Yeah, but all right. Stephanie's just shaking her head. So, okay. That's it for this episode. Of course, more Patreon content will be out this week. We'll be finishing up the Occult Technology of Power, which is a book that was not in the gift shop. But boy, that would have been a hell of a thing if it was. So anyway, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Lots of fun, and I couldn't have explained half of this stuff as well if you weren't here. And I mean, yeah, well, this is your gig. This is your thing. And I hope, and I think you're going to hear from a lot of other Sovereign Tech listeners. I think they'd all love if you went on, to do your, become a yoga, like a fully trained yoga teacher, even though you've done that. You've done it at Pork Fest. You've done yoga classes.
Yeah, but I have, and I've been practicing yoga for like 10 years, but never got officially certified as a yoga teacher. I can lead a yoga class, and I know
you do great
tidbits about it, but I would like to really learn, and I think it would be a great place to go to do yoga teacher training. So I may do that.
I think that would be awesome. If you did courses, I guarantee there'd be people buying that are listening to this right now. And yeah, I think that'd be awesome. So maybe one day we could have that everybody wants a Sovereign Con. They want the Sovereign Tech Convention to happen at some point, and maybe there could be morning yoga with Stephanie. How about that, huh?
Woohoo.
So, but you got to tell us you want that sort of shit. Anyway, that's it for this episode. Again, thank you so much, Stephanie. That was just, I really enjoyed doing this with you. And of course, new Sovereign Tech will be out this week.
Namaste, Brian.
What did they say
Jai
there?
Bhagwan.
Jai Bhagwan. Bombo Bay Tuna. Wait.
What?
Hold on. Ba weep grana weep niddyban. There you go. There's people out there that are going to know what that is. They'll know exactly what that
ain't
is.
Me.
Yeah. Klatu barada nikto. Anyway, I'll see you on the other side.